The voice of God calls us to await in him. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate our lives more perfectly to him, how will he find us?
Awake and ready.
Let's offer a prayer together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, dearest friend, beloved God, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, humbly and gratefully we bow to you all. Beloved Lord, bless us and guide us to aspire always to our highest potential and to live that aspiration by thy power and thy will. We are ever thine. Be with us now and always. Om. Peace. Amen. Good morning and welcome. We are delighted this morning to have with us, not in person, but by pre-recording, Nayaswami Asha. Asha Nayaswami, actually, to be correct. She was going to be with us in person, and of course, we are closed because of the shelter-in-place order. But it's just wonderful that Asha will be with us. She'll be offering the talk, and we are looking forward to having you with us, as always, as well. Many blessings. We'll now have some chanting and a brief meditation.
The first chant is, O thou King of the Infinite. And I'll read the words. O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the infinite, O thou King of the infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in the light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in the light of mellow joy. The next chant is from this sleep. The words are, from this sleep, Lord, will you wake me? Will you wake me? From this dream, Lord, will you wake me? In thee I dive, in thee I rise, in thy sea, in thee. From this sleep, Lord, will you wake me? The same, and then in thee I'm born, in thee I die, to live forever in From this sleep, Lord, will you wake me? From this dream, Lord, will you wake me? In thee I dive, in thee I rise, in thee I dive, in thee I rise, in thy sea, in thee, in thy sea, in thee. From this sleep, Lord, will you wake me? From this dream, Lord, will you wake me? In thee I'm born, in thee I die, in thee I'm born, in thee I die, to live forever in thee, to live forever in thee. From this sleep, Lord, will you wake me? From this dream, Lord, will you wake me? In thee I dive, in thee I rise, in thee I dive, in thee I rise, in thy sea, in thee, in thy sea, in thee. From this sleep, Lord, will you wake me? From this dream, Lord, will you wake me? In thee I'm born, in thee I die, in thee I'm born, in thee I die, to live forever in thee, to live sleep, Lord, will you wake me? From this dream, Lord, will you wake me? In thee I dive, in thee I rise. In thee I dive, in thee I rise. In thy say, in thee, in thy say, in thee. From the sleep, Lord, will you wake me? From this dream, Lord, will you wake me? In thee I'm born, in thee I die. In thee I'm born, in thee I die. To live forever in thee. 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 From this sleep, Lord, will you wake me? From this dream, Lord, will you wake me?
remaining inwardly focused, listen to these words from Affirmation for Self-Healing by Swami Kriyananda on our quality for the week, humility. Humility is not self-deprecation. It is self-forgetfulness. It is knowing that God alone is the doer. It is the realization that nothing in this shadow world of appearances is all that important, except as it draws us closer to the Lord. Never tell yourself that you are sinful or weak or incompetent or lazy, except as such statement may help you to surrender joyfully to God's power. Then live by that power. Never wear the mask of false humility. Humility is self-acceptance and self-honesty. You have a right to all power if you seek it in infinity, and if you never hold the thought that it resides in your little self. Now we'll do our affirmation together. I'll read it through first, and then we'll do it together loudly at first and then progressively softer until we are doing it just deeply inwardly. I live by thy power, Lord. What I have is ever thine, ever thine. Let's do this together. I live by thy power, Lord.
I live by thy power, Lord.
What I have is ever thine, ever thine.
What I have is ever thine, ever thine.
I live by thy power, Lord.
I live by thy power, Lord.
What I have is ever thine, ever thine.
What I have is ever thine.
In a whisper now. I live by thy power, Lord. What I have is ever thine, ever thine. Taking it deeply inward now. I live by thy power, Lord. What I have is ever thine, ever thine. I live by thy power, Lord. What I have is ever thine, ever thine. Please pray silently with me. Thou art the doer, Lord, not I. Express thy perfection through me as I strive ever eagerly to live in thy light. Om, peace. Amen.
Good morning. Our readings are taken from Ways of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda based on the teachings of Yogananda. This is week 17. How high should we aspire? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The passage this week is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 5. I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. The easiest explanation for these words is that they were spoken in criticism of the scribes and Pharisees, particularly since Jesus was often verbally attacked by them and stood up to them fearlessly. However, it wouldn't have been much of a challenge to the disciples, who aspired to spiritual perfection, to tell them, don't be like those who lack any such aspiration. Jesus, in fact, says only a few verses later, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. What Jesus was referring to here, then, was the self-righteousness of the priests. Don't seek perfection, he was saying to his disciples, in the image you project towards others. Don't be satisfied with a goodness born merely of ego definitions. The highest virtue is to transcend the very thought of personal virtue in the realization of God alone as the doer. Before this realization, even the thought, I am kind, or I am truthful, is self-limiting. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 7th chapter, yet hard the wise Mahatma is to find, that man who saith, all is Vasudeva. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Asha Nayaswami, and if things were as they were, I would be in your church either today or a time close to now, in person, with a trip that had long been planned for months, in which I was going to get to spend some actual real time with all of you. So instead, here I am, speaking to you as we're all speaking to each other through this wonderful medium, which we all thank God for. It's been fascinating to me how expansively Ananda has stepped into this new normal. And if anything, it's given us a much greater avenue of service, because anyone with a computer can now talk to the whole world. And Ananda is filled with wise angels who are having the opportunity now to share with brothers and sisters everywhere, and I count myself quite privileged to be among them. Today we're talking from the Rays of the One Light, and our particular reading, the Swami wrote Rays of the One Light. Well, he wrote it in several stages, actually, but the idea of what this book represents, which is the comparison between verses from the Bible and verses from the Bhagavad Gita, was a tradition that Swamiji got from Master. And then in 1986, 87, 88, I'm not sure what the exact copyright is on this book, but this is the second iteration of Sunday readings where he wrote it out, and then we use it for our sermon topics. Prior to that, it was just pretty much anything goes. Whatever you felt like talking about, you could talk about. But as Ananda began to become more global in its outreach, although global hardly in the way that we've become now, he thought it would be more valuable to deepen the focus every week. So for more than 30 years, every Sunday that I've given a Sunday service in the last 30 years has been one or another of the readings from this particular book. I think it's probably an old cover, but anyway. So I keep coming back around to them, and because I've given a lot of Sunday sermons over the years, I keep coming back around to these same readings. And so the one that we're doing today is a most interesting one. It's basically, well, the title is, in fact, exactly how high should we aspire? How high should we aspire? And we have to face into Jesus' words, be ye therefore perfect. So he answers his question. The question of the title of the sermon is specifically answered. How high should we aspire? There is no limit. We should aspire to be infinite in our consciousness and perfect in our expression of that consciousness. Oh, is that all that's being asked of us? Okay, how about tomorrow? Then I'll deal with it tomorrow. I'll get it all in order. There's kind of two ways to respond to this, and I think we have to be realistic about it. It's quite daunting. I mean, in fact, it's more than daunting. It can be just completely overwhelming. Here's a serious comment on it, that over the course of my many years of life, I've had a number of friends who've had periods of time where they've had a psychotic break from reality, where just one way or another, they were no longer functioning in our shared objective world. They were functioning on another plane of consciousness. In a number of cases, they went to a more elevated plane of consciousness where they saw the unity of all things, where they felt the power of light. It wasn't a descent into a subconscious dream. It was actually a rising up into another reality. And in other cases, it's been just a withdrawal. But in every case, and one specifically I was thinking of, I said to Swamiji, I feel like the person was standing on the precipice of profound spiritual understanding, and it was just too much. They just looked into what was going to be asked of them, and they just made a left turn into subconsciousness, where they hung out for a while, got a little bit of a break, and then came out again. Everybody has their own karmic inclinations, and because my mind is so intense, I have an understanding of how that intensity can slip out of reality. And it doesn't frighten me. Of course, no one loves it, but it doesn't frighten me because somehow I understand it. I understand, in a sense, mental illness a little better than I understand physical illness, just the way we are. But when I said that to Swami, he gave me an extremely interesting answer. He said, madness is a stage on the spiritual path. I think he said to me that everyone goes through. Now, I would believe that everyone goes through it based on what Master said, which is that before we come to God, we experiment with every alternative theory of happiness, as I call it, looking for another choice. And Swami said, as we awaken on the spiritual path to our benefit, at first it's just dogma, or it's belief, or it's tradition, or it's cultural, and we just sort of live in it without it actually defining our inner reality. It's part of our outer life. But then gradually over time we evolve to the point where we really understand that this is an inner call, and that true spirituality doesn't have to do with what I label myself, but it has to do with who I am. And then as our awareness expands even more, and we learn the true teachings of self-realization, and we get into a true relationship with the Master, we begin to really feel what that Master's consciousness is and what we are being called to. And if we have any real understanding of that, there's a natural inclination to say, wait a minute, I'm not really at all sure that I'm up for this. And then there's this sort of in-between stage where we recognize that there is no alternative. That once we realize that self-realization is the goal of our life, and that everything in this incarnation and all our incarnations is pushing us inevitably toward greater and greater awareness, we may just decide to drop out. And that's essentially what Swami said a lot of people do who have a break from objective reality. I mean, as I said, some people actually go into an elevated state for a while, but one way or another, it's a break from objective reality, and especially those who go into a subconscious world, we just take a holiday, and we sit there. We sit there in the self-created reality of subconsciousness, which just simply doesn't intersect with objective reality anywhere, and we contemplate our options. Is this really going to help me? And you see, this is relevant not just for those who've had psychotic breaks, but for all of us, because the inclination to drop into a lower energy, subconsciously created reality is what we all do. We all have this wish, understandably, to find an easier solution. Because putting out energy, taking responsibility, facing into our limitations, giving up the idea that anybody else is responsible for our happiness, these are very, very, very big ideas. And I think we have to be gentle with ourselves. And we realize these are very, very big ideas. They're easy to talk about. But in the solitude of our own meditation, there's a lot in there that has to be faced and has to be dealt with. And it is quite understandable to me why someone would just take a holiday from it. And just sooner or later, whether it's one incarnation or many, sooner or later, the problem with all subconscious versus superconscious solutions is that they don't work. It's just as simple as that. If they worked, it would be fantastic. If just oversleeping, overeating, oversexuality, over Netflixing, if there is such a verb, if any of those actually brought us greater happiness, whoopee, let's all do them. But as Swami Kriyananda puts it, he said, there is only one area of human endeavor in which everyone agrees on both the reality of it and the benefit of it, and that is spiritual realization. Many doctors will say it's a fine profession, actors have lots of fun, millionaires get to spend their money, but nobody can say this is the solution for everyone. And this solution is available to everyone except the masters. And at some point they capture us. They just capture us. We're just caught. We're caught by Jesus. We're caught by Yogananda. We're caught by Buddha. We're caught by Krishna. We're caught by Divine Mother. Somehow they catch us. And once they catch us, we may wiggle free. We may try to wiggle free is what I mean to say. But not only do they have us in their grip, but we have them in ours. And even because I'm talking about mental breakdown, even mental breakdown won't help you. I had this experience, which some of you have heard me describe. This was after I knew about self-realization, but prior to my meeting Swamiji. So I was deep enough into the possibility of self-realization, guided by Sri Ramakrishna, who was a great avatar of the 1800s, and also by St. Francis. They were my guardian angels, my upagurus. Upaguru means a true guru, but not the one, not your final God-appointed guru. Master was guided by Master Mahashaya in an almost guru-like manner, to the point where Master Mahashaya had to say to Yogananda, I am not your guru, because Master Mahashaya was so influential in his life. So I had Francis, St. Francis, and I had Ramakrishna. I was not alone. But it wasn't enough, because I hadn't met Swamiji, I hadn't come to Master, I hadn't come to Ananda. So I saw what was possible, and I had no idea how I was going to get there. I wasn't frightened, but I was in despair, because I didn't know how I was going to get there. And I remember standing looking out the window of my apartment in San Francisco, where I was living at the time, and I contemplated having a nervous breakdown. I just sort of stood there and thought, the phrase was, I could flip out. This was the psychedelic era, so people flipped out flipping out was kind of something that happened to people, whether drug-induced or not, or just from the confusion of psychedelic perception. But I thought I could flip out. And it was like a path I knew. This is why I can speak of it like that. When I said to Swami, there's a time where one just flips out, isn't that so? He said, yes. Because I remembered doing it, not literally, but actually, I remembered that I'd tried it. And so I stood there thinking, I could just flip out. I could see the whole picture. Someone would find me, I would be very strange. Maybe I would have taken off all my clothes and be dancing down the middle of the street, the kind of things that people do when they just break with objective reality. Then someone would come and get me, and they would take me to the hospital, and they would give me tranquilizers. I would be there, blah, 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 blah. A long time would pass, very expensive, very tiring. Then I'd be standing at the window, looking out the window, wondering how I was ever going to get to God realization, because it would be a long loop, but it wouldn't help. And so when Jesus says to us, be therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect, it's not a compliment. It's a simple statement of fact. You will be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And it's not a commandment either. It's just telling you, this is your destiny. So the question is, how much of it are we ready to embrace? And what is our personal, most direct route to that perfection? Because see, sometimes we think, we approach it outwardly. We approach it like, I'm going to master this like I've mastered everything else. I'm just going to do it. And Swami talked about how and we just try to use willpower without attunement. That's how I would put it. Swami talked about one of the monks at Mount Washington who meditated hours and hours and hours. Swami said one weekend the man said he meditated 40 hours. And it just passed, he said, like no time at all. Is there even 40 hours in a weekend? I guess there's 48. So he said, but it just passed like a moment to him. But in the end, he left Master. And in the end, he actually even left the spiritual path. Because he wasn't attuning himself. This is how Swami talked about it. He used all his willpower to force himself into meditation, but he didn't use any of his willpower, or enough of his willpower, to ask God to guide him according to God's will along the path that would really lead him to success. Because what we have to be doing is we have to be looking inward and we have to be looking upward. And we can't just, I don't want to say downward, but it's sort of like we can't just wrestle ourselves into the right way, because we are children of God. And the reason that we can be perfect like our Father in heaven is perfect is because we are perfect. And we are one with our Father in heaven. And now this is the peculiar part. The spiritual path is a battle. Life is a battlefield. Earlier this week I was talking about the affirmation that's been created by Devi and Jyotish, warriors of the light, that we really have to fight the battle between light and darkness. But when we are at war with ourselves, that's the wrong battle. And it is tricky because we are, like Krishna on the battle of Kurukshetra, we are going hand to hand against what we think of as our limitations. Let me think where the answer to this is. But that which limits us is not us. That which limits us is a false idea of who we are. It's really exactly like thinking that the clothes I wear is who I am. Or if I go outside and I get very involved in the mud and I come in, the mud is not me. I'm covered with mud. The mud looks like me because it covers me and it's shaped like me and it moves when I move. But my battle is not with myself. My battle is with this mud that I have to wash off. And if we think of it as ourselves and get at war with ourselves, it makes it harder for us to feel the love of God. Thoughts of guilt, thoughts of unworthiness, thoughts of our inability to succeed, all of these things confuse the picture. Where what we're really looking for is this deep experience. And this deep experience of God's presence within us, God's healing presence within us. I was referring also earlier to this week to a strange little cycle that I myself was responsible for. Master has this, the prayer, the healing prayer we call it. Divine Mother, manifest thy healing presence, we say. And when I learned that in the early 70s, I liked it, manifest thy healing presence, that seems nice. But just for no reason that I can think of, I thought it sounded better to say, manifest thy energy, light, and joy. So I started leading the prayer like that. Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent, thou art in these thy children, manifest thy energy, light, and joy in their bodies, minds, and souls. And I started saying it like that. Other people hearing me say it started saying it like that. And it got to be, to a very large extent, the way the prayer was said at Ananda. Ananda was smaller then, so one person could have more influence. And years later, it might even have been decades later, I was reading something about Master and healing, and he said, manifest thy healing presence, because wherever God is present, no darkness can exist. All of a sudden, I realized I had changed the meaning of the prayer. Just out of stupidity, perfectly good intention, but just because I wasn't subtle enough to know what I was doing. And I had to send out to the whole world, like this, oh dear, I've really done something here, we need to fix this. And fortunately, in almost all cases, everyone just rolled it back because they thought that I was representing Master. Why would they not think that? but I wasn't. So what I'm saying here is, and this is what I wanted to come to, is the healing presence. You see, what makes us perfect is not that by our willpower we have beaten back the bad qualities in us. It's by the grace of God. We have woken up to the fact that we were never separated. And I have this theory that I call the gospel according to Asha, which is the same as saying I just made it up, and it's not true. Because for many years in my life, I thought the way I was perfect as our Father in heaven was perfect, was to be perfect according to the standards that I had set for myself. You know, I would be kind, I would be diligent, I would be disciplined, I would meditate this amount, I would get up at this time, I would do this, I would do this, none of which I ever did. Very little of which I ever did. So I was always far from perfect. I was always in a constant state of guilt, disappointment, failure, frustration, and fear. Because to be perfect, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And quite frankly, I wasn't that good. I had this really big idea of what I was capable of doing. And despite all the evidence, I cling to it, which just gave me a perfect opportunity to feel bad all the time. Yeah. This is why, mental illness is close in my life. I play out the games like that, but I know that I'm not alone. But what I finally realized is that the perfection he's speaking of is, I'm going to use the word courage. The courage to actually just let go. Surrender. I gave a talk earlier this week in my fireside chats. I called it Fulfillment, Heartbreak, Surrender. The fourth word there is bliss, but I didn't feel qualified to put it in the title. But we touch it. We all touch it. We get strong in ourselves. We find the limitations of our own power. We surrender to the divine. And then we discover that the perfection he was talking about was never that we get ourselves so organized that we're perfect. Sure, we have to try to get ourselves organized. We have to use our willpower. The patient application of willpower is also part of it. We have to stand up to our karma. We have to be strong. But deep within ourselves, the strength we really have to have is the strength to trust God, which is really much more challenging than just getting up every morning at the same time and meditating 2 hours. Depending on what your karma is, that's either easy or unthinkable for you. But the real courage, the real power, is to trust God. And recently, very recently, I've realized the extent to which I am nervous is the extent to which I don't trust God. It's just, how could we be nervous if God is completely in charge? How could we be afraid if God is in charge? Of course, what I'm afraid of is not of God's will, but of my ability to rise to the challenge he gives me. But then again, why would God send us something we can't handle? And our perfection, you see, is not even that we don't stumble. Master said, I don't care if you fall. He said, if you fall, I'll help you up. If you weep, Master said, I will weep with you. He's just saying that's not where our perfection comes from. Our perfection is never forgetting that we are children of the divine, that our Father, Mother, Friend, Beloved is always with us. And where God's healing presence is, there can be no darkness. That means you, that means me. And Swami asked the question in the words he wrote here, how far do we wish to aspire? Well, we really have no choice. Because whatever plateau we reach will just gives us a view of our own potential. And with it, a view of the power of God to lift us into that and to make us free. God bless you.
Thank you, Asha. We'll have a reading from Whispers from Eternity that is a wonderful complement to that particular talk on aspiring high. This is, make me a lion of thy all-conquering wisdom, from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda. I, a lion cub of the Divine Mother, found myself thrown into life among the sheep of human frailties, of fear, failure, and disease. Living long among them, I learned to bleat with weakness, forgetting my lion nature and its roars, which could frighten away all petty, pestering sorrows. O Lion of realization, thou didst drag me away from those bleating sheep to the mirror-smooth waters of meditation. There didst thou cry, "Gaze!" But I held my eyes tightly shut, bleating with fear. Thy roar of wisdom then reverberated through my body. Thou madest me, by hard shaking and spiritual urging, open my eyes, and there, lo, in the crystal pool of my inner peace, I saw thy features to be even as thine own. Now I know myself as the lion of cosmic power. I will bleat no more with fear, weakness, and suffering, for I roar now with vibrant, almighty power. I bound about through the forest of all experiences, seizing little creatures of vexing worries, timid fears, and wild hyenas of disbelief, devouring them ruthlessly. O Lion of immortality, roar through me thine all-conquering power of wisdom. Now we'll have some music.
There's joy in the heavens, a smile on the mountains, and melody sings everywhere. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. Leave home in the sunshine, dance through a meadow, or sit by a stream and just be. The lilt of the water will gather your worries and carry them down to the sea. The lilt of the water will gather your worries and carry them down to the sea. Men hunger for freedom, but don't see their dungeon is only the thought that they're bound. Desires are their shackles, the hope that tomorrow the doorway to joy will be found. Desires are their shackles, the hope that tomorrow the doorway to joy will be found. There's joy all around us, why wait till tomorrow? We've only this moment to live. A heaven within us is ours for the finding, a freedom no riches can give. A heaven within us is ours for the finding, a freedom no riches can give. There's joy in the heavens, a smile on the mountains, and melody sings everywhere. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air. The flowers are all laughing to welcome the morning. Your soul is as free as the air.
And now we'll do our blessing for our offering. You can always support Ananda through our website. You can donate there. You can write checks. You can call us if you need to and arrange for a donation. We greatly appreciate all of those who are still supporting Ananda Portland so that we can continue to serve. Let's pray together. Divine Mother, we offer to Thee the fruit of our labors. Bless this offering, that it serve as a channel of Thy light to truth-seeking souls everywhere. Om, peace, amen. We have enjoyed this morning with you. We hope that you will continue to come back on Sundays and share our services with us. We'll continue to post them on Facebook and on YouTube and on our website. If you don't receive our newsletters, please let us know. You can go on to anandaportland.org and sign up for them there. We send those out several times a week now to keep people updated with the information about the coronavirus, as well as anything that we might be offering to you online. And we just hope that you all are safe, are well, and filled with God's presence no matter what the circumstances are. We'll close this morning with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters of self-realization, we bow to you all. Divine Mother, may thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotions, and may we be able to awaken thy love in all hearts. Om, peace, amen. Go out with joy.